You're listening to Wild About Arizona, the official podcast of the Arizona Game and Fish Department.
And welcome to Wild About Arizona. I'm John Treeweiler with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. With us today is Josh Hoffman, our Boating Safety Education Program Coordinator. And if we're talking to Josh, well, we're probably talking about boating in Arizona. Josh, good to have you. Thanks for being with us.
Good day to you, John. Happy to be here.
People think Arizona, we think desert, we think cactuses, we think dry, but there is water here. There's plenty of it, and there's a lot of boating that takes place on it.
Yeah, it comes a bit of a surprise if you're not familiar with the area, which I was not when I moved to the state, almost 20 years ago. You do think it's mostly cactus and sand.
But if you want to get out and enjoy the water, there are opportunities for that. So, Josh, tell us a little bit, first of all, about your role here at Arizona Game and Fish as we get to know you.
Yeah, so my role here, pretty much what I do is I educate people on managing risk associated with getting out on all of that water we have in our state. There's not a ton of it, but it is accessible and very popular.
And once you're on some of these bodies of water, I mean, they're big. And this is, it's legitimate water. It's
right.
Not something to
it can be.
Joke around about.
Yeah, with the Colorado River and some of our big lakes, there's a lot of open space.
So at the end of May, obviously holiday weekend, and as the summer months approach, 4th of July, some of these big holiday weekends, obviously it's a time when more and more people, they are out on the water. They're really enjoying themselves. So with those holiday weekends approaching, the summer approaching, Josh, what do you think is the most important thing that boaters really need to know and they really need to focus on?
Well, especially with holiday weekends, one thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is that, there's a lot of people that are going to have the same idea as you. And the waterways are going to be crowded. The boat ramps are going to be crowded. You might have to wait a while in lines. That's just going to come with the territory. And you want to be prepared, have snacks for the kids, arrive early, don't get bent out of shape when you got to wait, because that's what everybody's doing. And then making sure that you're sharing that wonderful water with the other boaters. We'd all love to have our own private little lake.
Sure.
But we don't, and so we need to make sure that we are enjoying the waterway in a way that is going to be safe and enjoyable for everybody else as well.
At the end of May every year, you guys do National Safe Boating Week. It's a national event. And talk to us about the importance of that and kind of why that's in place.
Sure. So, some of the things that catch us off guard are the things that we're just not aware of. We don't know what we don't know. And when you have a national campaign, it's to draw some focus, some emphasis upon something that maybe we're not thinking about too much, that there are risks associated with boating. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to have a safe boating campaign,
Sure.
Right? It's just go out and boat. But there are risks associated with it, and a lot of times they're not something that we think about. So part of my job here at Arizona Game and Fish and working with our national organizations is to help raise the awareness in our boating public of the risks that come with being on a body of water, whether it's from the water itself or the watercraft or other boaters or the weather. But there are risks that we want to be aware of, because the first step to managing the risk is knowing that there's one there. We manage risk in our daily life in all kinds of situations, and we should not ignore those risks when it comes to boating, especially when we're getting out with our family.
Yeah, boating is fun. Enjoying the water anywhere is a lot of fun, but as you mentioned, there's obviously risk associated with it, just like anything else. And I know some of the big things we talk about when you talk about National Safe Boating Week, and we've had you on television before with some of the different TV stations, and all the things we talk about, Josh, usually, it comes down to a lot of it's, drinking. You want to have a sober operator
Absolutely,
on your boat. That's obviously huge. Life jackets and just kind of safe boating in general. You want to touch on some of those, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting connection sometimes boaters have with getting on the water and alcohol. And when you're out in the sun, alcohol can be enjoyable, but that comes back to the risk factor as well. You're in a risk associated environment. You're not in your backyard by your grill. You're operating a vehicle with other people in it and being around other people. So you need to avoid the alcohol when you're on the water, especially at the very least, the operator needs to be sober. There are legal ramifications for boating under the influence of something, but then there's also ramifications for your family or for other people. So on the water, leave the beer at home. Leave it for after you get everything wrapped up and you're done with the day. Then enjoy some alcohol back in a nice, safe environment. With that in mind, you do need to be aware that not everybody is going to be as risk conscious as you are.
Sure.
So especially around the holiday weekends or as the boating picks up, you want to be a defensive boater and be aware that not everybody else out there is being as safe an operator as you are. That brings up the fact of needing to have life jackets. We think of wearing a seatbelt when we're driving a car because accidents happen, not because we're lousy drivers, but because somebody else might cut us off, because a tire might blow out. Something unforeseen can happen. When we're on the water, the same thing applies. If you're not prepared for being in the water, then something bad can happen when it does happen. And it might be because of another boater or a malfunction on your boat or a hazard in the water. You want to be prepared and have everybody on your vessel wearing a life jacket.
Well, and when it happens, it happens so fast.
Yeah.
When it happens, it happens. There's no time to, okay, let's grab the life jackets now.
Right.
When it happens, you could be in the water in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, it happens really quick. A lot of times there's injury connected to leaving the boat. And so you might not even have an opportunity to put on a life jacket should you even be able to reach one. You may be knocked out, you could be hurt, or somebody else in your crew on your boat needs help, but you're not able to help them because you yourself don't have a life jacket on.
When it comes to life jackets, I know you guys probably hear every excuse in the book as to why you don't want to wear a life jacket, why certain people don't. Mm-hmm. And, in Arizona, it's hot. It's too hot to have the life jacket on.
Yeah.
Or it's bulky. It's not comfortable. But the nice part about life jackets today is there are so many different types.
Yeah.
And the life jackets, there's really... There's a model or a style for you, and you can still be comfortable on the water.
Yeah, you really want to shop around a little bit. And, Amazon is great for that. Once you've picked out a couple life jackets that might work. But I would definitely visit some of our local sporting good places and check out some different types. There's a life jacket for every type of activity, whether you're doing something towed behind a fast boat, whether you're fishing, paddling, on a stand-up paddleboard. There's something that's going to work for your activity and the climate as well. If you're over 16, there's a lot of inflatable life jacket options, which are very cool as in temperature to wear. They don't restrict you. You're not strapping on a couple inches of insulation in July. You're able to wear a personal flotation device that is Coast Guard approved and will help if you get into a bad situation.
I know there's even one, right, Josh, that it just goes right around your waist.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It doesn't even go over your shoulder.
No.
If you saw somebody, you probably wouldn't even know they had a life jacket on them. But it mm-hmm. Explain to how that one works. It's just right around your waist, right?
So it is a waist pack inflatable. It is charged or inflated with a little CO2 cartridge that you activate by yanking on a little handle. And it inflates a nice, good-sized cushion of air that is secured to your chest and will give you all the flotation you need to get out of your dicey situation. They also meet the carriage requirements. If you're on a stand-up paddleboard, you're required to have a life jacket on your board, if not on your body. And so you can be wearing a waist pack. It's not going to interfere with your tan lines. You hardly notice it's there. They're very light. And then you've got an emergency device should something happen.
We wouldn't want to mess with the tan lines, Josh.
No.
Speaking of, you have to have it on your paddleboard. You have to have life jackets, obviously. What are the other safety equipment that's legally required to be on your vessel? Because it's not just a life jacket for everybody that's on board. You do have to have some other things in order to be legal on the water.
Yeah, so that's going to depend on whether you're running a powerboat or a paddle craft. If you've got any type of motor on a vessel, it's a powerboat, and you need to have it registered with Arizona Game and Fish, and you're going to have your decals on it and your registration numbers to be legal to operate the boat. As far as equipment goes, you're going to need to have a life jacket available for every person on the vessel. Children 12 and under must be wearing those life jackets. Those life jackets need to be Coast Guard approved. They got to be in good condition. All the buckles work. They aren't super sun faded. You've got to be able to read the label on the inside that says it's Coast Guard approved. Even if the life jacket's in good physical shape, but you can't read the label, you can't prove that it's U.S. Coast Guard approved, and so it's no longer a serviceable life jacket.
Sure.
You need to make sure everybody can get to it. If they're not wearing it, having it in its original packaging, in the cubby, underneath the cooler, well, that's not really readily accessible.
Sure.
So life jackets for everybody. If you've got any type of enclosed space, and I would recommend for any type of gasoline-powered motor, is you want to have a fire extinguisher. We've got all the information on the exact specs, depending on your vessel length, on our Game and Fish website, of the requirements for navigation lights, what type of fire extinguisher to have. You want to have first aid kit. That's not necessary legally, but it's a good idea to have. Distress signals. If you're on federally controlled waters, which includes the Colorado River and its lakes, its lake system, you need to have daytime distress signals and nighttime distress signals, so like flares. Those are Coast Guard requirements.
And throwable too, right?
Yeah. Depending on your vessel length, you need to have a throwable flotation device, and those are those cushions that everybody sits on.
Sure. Well, yeah, because if someone falls in the water and they weren't wearing their life jacket, or maybe you come across another boat that is in distress, this is how you're going to help them.
Yeah, they're a great secondary emergency device.
When you're out on the water, especially, we know, Josh, as we approach the summer months, weather can roll in and be very unpredictable, especially here in Arizona with monsoon storms that can develop and come in the afternoon. Can you talk to us a little bit about just the importance of really understanding that weather, being aware of it, and really having a plan in case this were to happen to you?
Yeah, that is key, is having the plan. We get caught unawares by things, and most of the time the bad things happen because we don't have a plan. In the summertime, storms can come up very quick, and so you want to be aware that, hey, you know what? It's monsoon season. There could be thunderstorms in the afternoon. Maybe we're just going to boat in the morning. Or if we're out, we're going to be very aware of the weather, paying attention to if there's a sudden drop in temperature and the winds pick up. Well, that could be an indication that a thunderstorm is rolling in. It can be tricky in some of our canyon lakes where you can't see to the horizon very far.
Sure. And
a storm will all of a sudden be there, and maybe you don't have time to get off the water. If you're in a paddle craft, you want to make for the nearest shore. Pull your craft up out away from the water's edge as much as possible, and find someplace low down to hunker and wait for the storm to pass. Obviously, you don't want to be waiting in a wash, as those will fill up and run. If you're in a powerboat, you may want to just wait out the storm. It might be in a sheltered cove, get to the lee side of an island or a canyon, get some protection from the wind, and then just wait for the storm to pass. We had a really bad storm at Lake Pleasant a few years ago. Everybody was trying to get off the water at the same time at the 10-lane ramp, and that is also happened to be the direction of the storm. And we had boats all over the place, not on their trailers. It was a real mess. And whereas the boaters who just waited the storm out in the middle of the lake or in a cove, kept their engines powered up to keep their bows pointed into the storm, they were fine. It was the folks trying to get onto a boat trailer in the middle of a storm that ran into trouble. You might get wet.
Yeah.
It's going to rain, but
right.
That's not that huge of a deal. And then you'll have an adventure to recount later on how you waited out this thunderstorm back in Humbug Cove or whatever.
Yeah, as long as it's safe to do so, right?
Yes.
Wait it out on the water and have a plan, know if it's going to be obviously raining that afternoon or storms are in the forecast, probably a bad day to boat, or like you said, maybe go in the morning. But also it's probably a good idea to have, maybe a weather radio on board, or at least weather, an app on your phone, something like that, so you can look at this stuff if it starts to come in.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to check the weather before you head out. I know I've got some really good rain gear that never gets wet because it's always home when the storms hit, because I don't check the weather. It's always sunny here. It's beautiful weather until it isn't, and it'll catch you off guard. So you do want to be aware, and you should always be aware too of where water may be entering the lake that you're boating on, or if you're on, like say, the Salt River and you're tubing, that water levels might rise quickly. SRP controlling the dams, if they get too much water in their lakes, they're going to be letting water out, and the Salt River can rise. We get water rushing into lakes. We had a really bad occurrence last summer up in one of our canyon lakes where some boaters weren't entirely prepared for the flash floods that came down, and one of the boats wouldn't start, and we ended up with a couple of fatalities from that. They weren't doing anything wrong. They just were in the wrong place at the wrong time in monsoon season, and the waters caught them in a bad place. So you do want to understand that boating in the monsoon season in restricted canyons, that's kind of up on the risk factor a bit.
Yeah, and boating is safe, and it can be safe, and it's fun, right? We want to have fun with it. And I know you mentioned, fatalities. Unfortunately, people do die on the water. And what's that stat, Josh, with the life jackets? Because the majority of people who unfortunately do die on the water, they weren't wearing a life jacket, correct?
Yes. So it's a percentage that holds true pretty much year after year from the Coast Guard when they crunch their numbers. That nationwide, it's between 70 and 80% of all boating fatalities are drownings. And of that number of people that drowned, almost 80% of them were not wearing life jackets. And that's true year after year. So there's a large number of boating fatalities that are needless, that if they were wearing a life jacket, they wouldn't be on the fatal side of the column. It would have been a bad day, but they needn't have drowned.
What's the biggest mistake that someone new to boating probably makes, or what's your biggest piece of advice for somebody who is new to operating a watercraft on the water?
When you start something new, depending on like when I first moved to Arizona, I started hunting. And as an adult male, I felt really out of my depth, not knowing anything about hunting, and I knew it. And so I sought people to help me out. But then there are some other things that you pick up that you like, I can do this. This is easy. I can run a boat.
Sure.
It's water. There's nothing to hit.
I've driven a car before.
Right. This is going to be easy. I think the biggest mistake that new boaters make is assuming that they know what they need to know. The problem is we don't know what we don't know, right? And with boating, there's a lot that comes with experience and also education. And so a new boater, I think the biggest mistake is not getting educated, either about how to operate the boat, educated about the risks, and also educated about the legal ramifications of when you put that boat or kayak or stand-up paddleboard in the water. There's things that you don't know and that you probably should know.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the perfect segue, Josh. I mean, you should take a boater education course. You should go learn about it. Even if you're an experienced boater, a refresher won't hurt now and then. Talk to us about some of the boater education options or courses that are available out there.
Sure. We've got several options available in our state through our Arizona Game and Fish boating program. We've got 5 different online vendors that cover the national boating education needs per the U.S. Coast Guard, but also cover all of our state-specific information, things that keep you out of trouble with the legal issues in Arizona, and covers everything you need to know about operating a boat safely, what to do in emergencies. These are available online through the Arizona Game and Fish boating education page. We also have classroom courses for boating education that are offered through our website. Those are in Phoenix and Lake Havasu, typically once a month. And we can also send our classroom material, mail it snail mail to your home for you to do on your own, and then send your test back to me, and I check it out and send you the results. We've been doing a lot of that and online, obviously, this last while dealing with health restrictions.
Sure.
The classroom courses haven't been as accessible, so we're doing a lot online. It's very accessible, and they're very affordable. Talking about $25 to $35 to print your certificate once you've completed the course. And most insurance companies do offer a rate reduction if you've got a boater ed course. Now, these boating classes I've been mentioning, these are all associated primarily with powerboats.
Okay.
If you're a paddler, we do have a free paddle course online available through Game and Fish, an online version of the powerboat online course, but it happens to be free. And then we also do hands-on kayak classes, usually once a month. And we will be starting in the warm months, getting those fired up again around the state.
And these courses, they're extremely beneficial to the boater, aren't they?
Absolutely. They give you either a confirmation, yes, okay, I feel confident now, I've got what I need to go out and have a great time with myself, my family, with my friends, and I'm going to be keeping everybody as safe as possible. Or it's a good aha moment, like, wow, I had no idea that there were all these other things that I should be considering and thinking about and planning for. It's just a great thing to have in your toolbox as a boater to know. Now you know what you need to know while you're out on the water.
You touched on a little bit earlier, but it's really important, especially as we approach a holiday weekend at the end of May and several holiday weekends coming up in the summer, which makes, obviously, boating really popular. It's important for everyone to be courteous out there on the lake. I mean, even just not on the lake, but at the boat ramps, those can sometimes become heated areas, and there may be somebody that's new to boating, doesn't really know what they're doing, and, they may be getting in trouble, Be courteous, help each other out, be nice, right? Yeah,
there's a lot of factors that come into play here. There is water, as you said, in Arizona, but most of us have to travel a ways to get there. So you're talking about a lot of packing involved, early mornings, rousting all the kids, getting all the gear together. You finally get to the lake after having to turn around because you forgot life jackets or something. There's a big line. You're finally able to get down to the water, and the guy in front of you is taking forever. He's not prepared. He's not ready. You've got to back the trailer down. That's another source of angst for a lot of people, of having to back up and launch the boat off the trailer. So there's things you can do to mitigate the stress and the possible conflict with other boaters, making sure that you're ready to launch your boat. So getting everything dialed in the make ready area before you back down the ramp. You've got the boat unhooked. You've got the plugs in. You've got life jackets out. You fired up the motor, make sure that it's going to work. You've made sure the battery's got juice. Back down the ramp, get it off the trailer, get your vehicle out of there as quick as possible is a way to be courteous to the guy behind you. And you're also, setting a good example for your kids or whatever. Paddlers, you want to make sure that you're not hogging the ramp, getting all your gear out of your trailer, off your truck, off the roof of your car. You want to avoid inflating your stand-up paddle boards down at the bottom of the ramp. Take care of that up in the make-ready lane. A lot of our lakes will have alternative access for paddlers. We can haul our kayak across the beach and put in pretty much anywhere.
Sure.
You don't have to make use of the ramp. So I understand, sometimes our kayaks are pretty heavy, especially if we're using some fishing kayaks or the pedal types. And you're not going to want to haul that over sand and rocks. So if you do need to use the ramp, just be courteous like all the other boaters, or what you're wanting the other boaters to do, and make good use of your time and the space. Don't park in the middle of the ramp. Try and make it available so that other people can be using the ramp while you're offloading or loading your equipment.
Well, and not just at the ramp, but also, on the water,
too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And especially because, we've talked about there's power boats and paddle boards, but there's also jet skis out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different type of watercraft, once you get on the water, too, and that behavior needs to continue out there.
Yeah, it's a multi-use area. It's just like being out on the BLM or state trust land. You've got people that are equestrians, you've got mountain bikers, hikers, hunters, guys on side-by-sides and quads. Lots of people using that space. Same on the lake. You're going to have people out there with lots of different agendas and lots of different ideas of what their perfect day on the lake is going to be. And we have to make allowances for everybody else who also has their idea of what a perfect day is. You guys share the space. not only to be courteous, but also to be safe. You want to be always aware that if you're a paddler, powerboats might not see you right away.
Sure.
So don't paddle out in the middle of the boating lanes where they're going fast, where they're towing tubers or doing wakeboarding. Stay closer to the shore. Jet skis need to be very aware of the wake they create in a short amount of time. Respect those buoys that are marking off channels for no wake zones, because that's where paddlers, especially paddlers with family, go to paddle safely. That's where I take my kids, is back into coves that are marked off with the no wake buoys. Bass fishermen, you're in a hurry to get from one fishing spot to the next. Be aware there could be a paddler out in front of you. You want to keep your head up and be aware you're sharing that space with somebody else.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I know this isn't 100% your area, but it involves the water, and it's in aquatic invasive species,
Yeah.
Josh. And that's we could probably do a whole episode on that, and maybe we will one day.
Yeah.
But that's important. Talk to us about that, because aquatic invasive species are out there, and we don't want them to spread. And it's clean, drain, and dry, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and this is another one of those risks that we might not be aware of. And part of my role is making people aware of the risk that when you put a boat in one body of water, there is a risk that you might be bringing something into that body of water from somewhere else that isn't supposed to be there. That could be a disease that affects fish. It could be a weed that will grow prolifically because it doesn't have a natural inhibitor in this new body of water. It could be a mollusk like the zebra and quagga mussels that don't have native predators in our western bodies of water, and they grow prolifically. They're filter feeders. I think the mussels are the biggest offender when it comes to aquatic invasives, and it's also the most readily recognizable. People understand that, or have heard by now, about you don't want to move a mussel. You want to be aware that there are crustaceans that could be brought into a new body of water, or they're already there. And the big problem with the crustaceans is that they're filter feeders. The lake gets really nice and pretty and clear after they're infested, but the problem is that these guys have filtered out all the nutrients that the native ecosystem was relying on. And so you come to Lake Pleasant, which has quagga mussels, and you put your boat in that lake. When you leave, you need to make sure that you clean your boat off when you pull it out, that you pull the plug and drain all the water out, and then you let it dry good before you put in at another lake. You don't want to accidentally transport those invasives from Lake Pleasant to somewhere else, or from the Colorado River up to a lake up on the rim.
What's the best part, Josh, about getting out and enjoying the water in Arizona? Being on it, whether it's a powerboat, a jet ski, or a paddleboard or a kayak, what's the best part?
I think you said it there. You're on the water. The state is water hungry. We love water. I mean, if you love this state, you also love sunshine. I love it here.
Sure.
I grew up west coast of Canada, 13 to 19 feet of rain a year. That was what I lived in. I didn't know I was wet. I was a fish in the water. I didn't know I was wet. But it was always gray, always cloudy. And I love the blue skies here. It's always sunny. But water is such a magnet when you're in the desert. And getting a chance to get out and get on the water, the smells change, the sounds change. I find that I'm instantly relaxing as soon as I'm on the water. It's just a switch being flipped, and you're able to enjoy Arizona in a whole different way. You get to some of our canyon lakes. You're in a canyon on water. It is just an amazing experience, whether you're in a powerboat or on a stand-up paddleboard or in a kayak or a canoe. It is a wonderful experience.
Well, I'm sold. Should we go?
Yes, absolutely.
We've talked about a lot today between safety and regulations and just education. Even just we talked about aquatic invasive species. A lot of resources. Probably best spot to go is Game and Fish website, right? You can find all this stuff there, Josh?
Yep. Right up on the top banner is a link for boating. And then on the boating page, there's links for law enforcement, for education. There's my email and phone numbers also on there.
Perfect. Well, let's get on the water.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening. Visit us online at www.azgfd.gov.